Hi guys, it's Love from Come Fly with Love and Sky Pirates Productions, and we are here with my fourth episode of Under the Influencer, where I get to interview social media personalities from all aspects of the aviation field. I'm here with my guest, and we are here to help you provide insight, guidance, inspiration to help you grow your personal and professional brands. And today we are sitting with Australia's beloved travel experts. And any given day, this gentleman sits in front of millions and millions of viewers. He has put the word influencer on another level. And his show has been viewed in, I guess it's over 30 plus, 40 plus countries. And I would like to ask you guys to help welcome my friend and my personal mentor, James Wilkerson. So
Hi,
welcome to the show.
thank you.
Um, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive in and I ask you personal questions?
Yeah, we Wayfarer just got actually picked up by a Russian network a few weeks ago. Like they do an AVOD on YouTube supplier. They've got like 40 million or something crazy. So it's interesting. And so yeah, Wayfarer is an executive travel and lifestyle TV show. We go after executive travel because there's nothing sexy in business travel in that space in the world from a TV standpoint. Everything's all like adventure driven or heavy food stuff, or so we try and do something a little bit different. We do kind of luxury hotels. We do business class on airlines, destinations around the world. So we do a lot of insider guides. I was on Time Out for 8 years, so a lot of it is what you'd find in Time Out in New York, right? So great bars, restaurants, cafes, galleries, shops. That's us. That's what we do. Yeah, I've been doing that and another magazine for almost 20 years now. So coming up on 20 years in May next year. But yeah, it's good. I do a lot of stuff on the 7 and 9 networks in Australia. So we have our version of Sunrise, which I'm on quite often, and the Today Show, which is like your Today Show, just on different networks here. So I do a lot of breakfast TV and I do late night news as well. So yeah, it's been an interesting year. So especially on the travel front, where everything is pretty much grind to a halt in Australia almost entirely. So
And great. So welcome again. And I am honored to have you on the show. I'm going to ask you some questions in regards to you being on social media, as well
mhm.
as how COVID has impacted your business
Mhm.
personally and professionally. And yeah, so let's start from the beginning. So how did you get into the whole aviation industry?
Well, it was in my blood really. My dad was at Qantas for almost 25 years. So I grew up on airplanes, and 5 members of my family all worked for Qantas as well. Almost did about I think at the last count it's something like over 80 years of service for the airline combined within my family. So when I started off just doing travel journalism for a newspaper, and then got into magazines, and then from magazines doing TV simultaneously. So that's how I got into it. But I think, having, been around the world 8 times by the time I was three, I think it kind of just naturally sort of happened. And taking a lot of interest in the sector. There's not a lot of travel journalists who also understand aviation down to a T. There's either aviation writers or they're aviation experts. So I kind of come in more on when I talk about aviation, I talk more from the consumer standpoint, in terms of what can the general public resonate with versus the technical details on things. So a lot more on that side, which I think there's a bit of an opportunity in the market, to talk about aviation from that aspect where you are reporting on it, but you're not going high level on it, if that makes sense. It's kind of the average person asking what airlines are up to at the moment. I would explain to them, from a scheduling standpoint, I'd keep things simple. So aviation for me is been in the blood for a long, long time.
So you were what we call the professional non-rev, like standby.
Yes. Yeah.
Like always with the insights of what's going on in the aviation industry with flights and products and services.
Yeah. Well,
That's
I did
awesome.
last year. I think I did like 105 flights last year, 110, I think almost last year. My average flight time was 7.5 hours. We live a long way from the rest of the world. So so
Wow.
that's an average flight time of 100 flights of 7.5 hours. So I think I took like something like 36 United flights last year. I took something like 25 American flights. I took 30 British Airways flights, and those airlines don't operate
Wow.
domestically in this country. So that gives you an idea
No.
of the long haul travel I've sort of been doing. So I think I actually took 5 domestic flights last year in Australia, and I did like 90
Wow.
something international. So yeah, it's a case of I think, when you work with airlines, from my point of view, we don't do critical reviews. We kind of, when we do reviews, we talk about what's on offer, the good. Sometimes you might mention things that could be improved, but I don't really critically do things like that. I think it's interesting with partnering with airlines. So I write about them from a news standpoint, or we feature it from a product standpoint. And I kind of more feature the product than review the product, if that makes sense. So we look for the highlights and everything. So I did a ton of stuff back in January this year with American. And then we ended up doing a big feature on American during the pandemic, when they were doing cargo flights to Australia. And I did a big segment at the airport, took a news crew out with me, or the camera crew with me, and did a segment on board a 777 that was empty at Sydney Airport. Did an interview on the flight deck with our cameras 10 minutes before pushback, which is impossible, right? You know that, like, it's just, you don't have access to that kind of thing.
Chaos. Yeah.
I know. So we work with, and that was all about cargo stuff. So we just work with airlines on different things, right? So yeah, a lot of it does mean, we get free tickets or that kind of thing, but we certainly repay it from a coverage standpoint. But it's also,
Absolutely.
they also come to us. They come to me, and knowing that I've tried 20 different business classes on any given year around the world. So it's an interesting insight into competitors' products simultaneously when I discuss it with them, and who does things well, who doesn't do things well. So yeah, it's kind of like, when you do that many flights, people ask the question of, what's the best business class, and or first class. It's very hard to say one above the other. There's,
I
like
am
I
going to
said,
ask that.
there's different things of different airlines that that
Right.
are you can pick apart. There are little things, I don't think there are huge things. I don't think there's one huge one, but yeah, we sort of professional standby, although confirmed seat, not standby seat.
Yes. Yes.
But
And I meant that in the sense that you have insider knowledge, you know. Um,
mhm,
so you talked about pivoting from, I guess, just being, having it in your blood growing up, being
mhm,
exposed to the airline industry, and then you became a travel journalist. Did you
mhm.
know that you were going to stay within the aviation industry and field, or did you did it just happen like to be like that because that's what you thought you had an expertise in?
Well, I'm probably more so an expert in hotels. I've done a hotel publication for almost 20 years. So
Okay.
it's kind of side by side. If you look at it, a lot of aviation writers don't understand hotels, don't understand how hotels work, don't understand how the industry works. So I understand both industries equally as much as each other. And I think that's a bit of a key to it. So I can talk on TV about hotels, intimately, as much as I can talk about airlines intimately, and how they're run, how the airlines are run, how hotels are run, how hotels are developed, and how airlines are grown. So I know it from how routes stack up, and I know how to talk about how hotel room revenues can stack up at the same time. So yeah, I think it's kind of it's just getting to know the industry more and more and more and more as you get older, and having more contacts, and talking to them. And in the hotel industry, I know the 6 top global CEOs of hotel companies really well. I could send them a text message now, like on that kind of level with them. And I have a similar kind of relationship with several airline CEOs, but not on the same level. Like with hotels, I know them a lot more. But it's interesting. I think it's hotel companies probably go through less change to a large degree from a leadership standpoint. We know airlines do change from a leadership standpoint. It's particularly from where my contacts sit. My contacts in airlines generally sit in communications teams and public relations teams. Whereas hotels, I know the CEOs better than I do know the public relations team. So it's a bit of a turnaround. And I think in aviation, we've seen a lot of changes in personnel. from a public relations standpoint. So you've really got to be on your toes, getting to know the new people at airlines pretty quickly. That's a huge key. But also then when you start talking to them, they realize that you know what you're talking about. And they're like, okay, wow, okay. And they're going to give you more time. So
Right.
it really is just sort of understanding the industry. It's, you know, the average person doesn't know, you know, what makes a route stack up, you know, from when you're launching new routes and products and that kind of thing. So it is just knowing it intimately and knowing it so well that, you know, when I do get on TV, I can be thrown pretty much any major curveball and I can answer it. It's just more trickier things, you know, like the max and when there are accidents that are I really steer clear of, because you've got to get on really heavily on the technical side of things. So
Correct.
but everything else I'm pretty good with.
Oh, interesting. And then,
Hmm.
so, you're on here because of the whole social media aspect. You have a huge following on social media, and they're loyal followers because they follow you into your other publications. Um, so let's
Yeah,
talk about that
ours
a little.
is
Like, uh-huh.
yeah, ours is more. It's interesting. You look at sort of social media, and you look at how many platforms there are, right? So
Hmm.
if you look at Wayfarer, for example, all of our growth is in YouTube. Our growth on YouTube has been, you know, from launching a channel with 0 viewers up to 800,000 impressions, 60, 70,000 views. You know, we've been, from an impression standpoint, around 2 million plus now. We're 20% recommended
Wow.
by YouTube on Google without spending a dollar on Google.
Wow.
So that one's picked up, but that's because during the pandemic as well, every single Friday we released a new 14-minute episode of my TV show to our viewers purely through YouTube, not through network TV. So we're putting up original content on a very frequent basis, and YouTube loves that. Google loves that when you do that. So that's a
Oh,
key.
that's
And
great
then
insight. Yeah.
and then on the other side of it has been more LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn personally, I'm connected with like around 9,000 people on LinkedIn. And one of our pages has, I think, like 30 something thousand, 35,000 followers, which is pretty high actually, on LinkedIn. So when I put a post up about borders being closed, I had like 35,000 views of my post, and I'm connected to, you know, senior politicians in Australia, and so my comments were going out through all their feeds simultaneously. So in Australia, that's quite a lot, to be honest. Like the average LinkedIn post here gets about 300. I'm getting 30,000. So
Wow.
it's just
That's
different platforms.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like with Wayfarer, right, from an Instagram standpoint, because it's me, plus it's also my brand. Like I just do it myself on my own personal one, because on social media, if you look, a lot of magazine publications, um, that have done well on social media, is theirs is more using other people's photos. If you look at Condé Nast Traveler and Travel and Leisure, they're using other people's photos, just crediting them, right? Or they're using the stock photos from the hotels or the airlines.
Right.
So you're losing a lot of that first person touch. You're not following a person. You're kind of getting highlights of the publication, but they're just picking and choosing other people to show you stuff. It's like they're just curating something, but there's there's not a lot of brand new original content that they've done themselves. So yeah, it's kind of and Instagram, as you know well, I mean, it's one of those platforms where you do have to be front and center on it. You know, I'm not on my TV show. I'm the facilitator of the talent. I don't become the talent. I'm the chefs of the talent.
You were the face of your show.
The
I love
curator,
watching you in your show.
but I'm not on it very
As
much.
do
And
your
I think
do
it's
your loyal
yeah.
loyal fans, so
Yeah, I'm not on it much. So I think from an Instagram standpoint, I don't have a huge following. So I don't put a lot of photos of myself up on it. It's kind of, for me, it's more, I'll take photos of the hotel where I am or the airline that I'm on, or do you know what I mean? So we see
right.
value in social media from our standpoint in YouTube, which does drive a lot of business,
Yeah,
and LinkedIn, which drives a lot of business. Do you know what I mean? So also too, the
absolutely.
fact that Instagram is not immediately clickable through, apart from setting up those, you know, the link in bios, you
Everything.
know, where people
Right.
can do it all. So I think you're losing a lot of that immediate touch point. You have to look at something and then go back, go into something else, and then into something else, into something else. If you look at YouTube, I can have web addresses things. People can click on everything right through. They talk about why Pinterest is so strong, is that when people click on a photo, it goes to a website. So you can promote your products and your publications more effectively on some platforms. So we just sort of look at it from that aspect in terms of, we know our strength is in YouTube versus Instagram and stuff. So Instagram, I think, is great fun, and I think people appreciate it, and you do very well on it. As a brand, I think, Instagram is so much more valuable, I think, for individuals versus brands, so to speak. So yeah, we're all of ours we find through YouTube. But then again, some other people aren't strong on YouTube, and we find our strengths in different areas.
Right.
It's not
I mean,
often
you're a
you'll see
productions
someone.
company, like, so it's very important for people to sit down and, have the time to one, educate themselves through your any of
Mhm.
your videos, as well as for entertainment as well. It is very entertaining. For those of you who have not added him yet, you should add Wayfarer on YouTube. On any given huge city, in any given huge city, he does provide insights of like the top places
Yeah.
to be
You know what's
for
funny is it
executive
depends on
travel.
what yeah, it's what you tag on it too is really funny. Like if I tag cowboy boots on our Texas episodes, the cowboy boots hashtag delivers so much more than like guide to Fort Worth, for example, would the tag would be. Anything like that. Cowboy boots
Interesting.
through the roof. It's really funny on YouTube.
So
It's
you become
different things
so
you tag.
you perfected your craft in not only um, content, but as well
Mm.
as hashtagging. Like,
Yeah,
so
there's only a couple I know that work really well. It's just funny because it's some hashtags are just millions and millions and millions. It's like, oh, is someone really going to follow a hashtag now that has millions and millions of photos? Because
right,
oh, you just scroll through it to be like, oh, unfollowed. Do you know what I
it's
mean?
true.
So
Right,
yeah,
it's
it's
true.
just like because we do airlines, destinations, hotels, fashion, art galleries, and more, we have to think multi kind of approach. We've got to think about retail as much as hotels, as much as airlines, as much as the arts. So
Right.
yeah, but I
You know
think
what
it's good fun. So
what I love about you personally, knowing you personally, is that no matter how big you are, you are your personal brand as well as the professional brand of the Wayfarer. Um, you still pay attention to your insights. You know your impressions. You know your insights. It's a
mhm.
full blown business, right? I guess it's a marketing tool for you guys. For
Yeah,
the big brand, and you really pay attention to that, and you kind of tailor a lot of your marketing as well as your content toward um, a lot of, yes, your impressions, your viewers, your audience. And so that
mm.
I'm very fascinated by, like, what made you, how did you get into that, for the viewers out there who don't think that it's important to pay attention to those facts? Like, how can you give some kind of insight on that journey of?
Um, yeah. It's interesting if you look at sort of network TV and online TV and in-flight entertainment, and it's hard to be kind of something for everyone, right? So it's picking and choosing opportunities in sectors. I think there's a lot of holes out there in terms of what would actually rate really well. I mean, if you look at, we're talking aviation, so if you look at sort of some of those Heathrow airport shows or behind the scenes, with carriers, they get little bits of traction, but they don't get a lot of mainstream traction. So what we try to do is bring airline content as well into the show. So it could be an insider guide to DFW's Terminal D. It could be inside one of the new club lounges in Chicago. But TV is funny. It's here we don't have in Australia we've got one major pay TV provider, right? You've got dozens now. So it's kind of picking and choosing and doing things. I mean, at the moment we're targeting Amazon to try and get onto Amazon because I've got a good contact at Amazon. So we're already on like Pluto TV in Europe and Roku in the US and a few different other platforms. And I think we've just been picking and choosing. I think we chose a segment that was good initially, but also too, it's all the persistence of filming so much last year. When the borders do open for us in Australia, we've got the newest international travel content that no one can get because they haven't been able to go and film it. So we're sitting here on a bank of
Mm.
25 episodes that can be turned into a full-blown travel show on TV. So, but we don't have, the production crew of 20 people on set doing stuff for us. It's me and 2 cameras. Like it's minimal, but I think that way you get more of the experience of when we walk into a restaurant, the restaurant's full. We're not doing interviews with chefs in empty restaurants. We're filming on a Friday night at 8 o'clock, like peak hour, right? Prime time. So it's finding little niches, I think, and keys and characters and then the networks. It's just the right time. We've got Lifestyle Channel in Australia, and all the focus last year for them was food. They didn't want to look at travel. So now they want travel content. We have travel content. No one else has travel content. So it's niches and platforms are keys to success at the moment.
Interesting. I've learned so much already. You mentioned that you were in other countries. You had looked at Amazon, Pluto in certain countries. What is your personal, I guess, goal, or what is the production's goal for your company or for the Wayfarer as far as exposure? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, what is the ultimate goal?
To be honest, is when we talk to tourist boards who, sponsor the show or support the show, or airlines as well. It's all eyeballs, how many viewers we can pick up in our country or other countries. Others don't care as much. Others go for the quality of the content and the quality of the reach. Some want 100,000. Some are happy with 10,000, but really high quality. Given we've got a niche audience, but we've got a high net worth audience. Like I personally say, our audience of what we do with Wayfarer, with our digital magazine and publication, is you're targeting luxury travelers versus targeting 100,000, and 5,000 might be luxury travelers. Like that's all well and good, but you're going more aspirational then. Like, it's a case of, but if tourist boards just want big numbers and networks, other tourist boards are happy with what we provide. We're starting to look at more in terms of in-flight entertainment. We've got a few airlines that are looking at our content at the moment. But the way that we film it and edit it, which is of a HD YouTube quality, which is very high quality, that could almost go on TV. The only difference is that to go to broadcast TV, it just needs to be color balanced and audio balanced. That's all. Like we film it beautifully well, edited beautifully well. That quality of that content's good enough for airlines for in-flight. So we've already been on WestJet in Canada and British Airways, and we're looking at others. And so we don't have to spend all the money to go to broadcast. We can spend the money to go for in-flight entertainment or through those apps that we were talking about. Amazon is gone really high end now. So the quality on Amazon is pretty much with Netflix. It's kind of a side by side with Netflix now. So there are not a lot of other apps out there at the moment. Viacom, CBS are involved in quite a few that we're involved with, through their ownership in Pluto TV in Europe and Roku in the US. So they're the more of the tier we look at. We had a distributor who did those deals for us. Just tricky from that front is the fact that our distributor is to get up to their specs is quite expensive to cut some of the content and get it ready. It's very expensive, and they don't give you much revenue in return. They almost give you zero. So we have to invest a lot. So if a tourist board wants eyes, I'll have to just pay for that on top. But yeah, I think ours is more high quality audience. And so we find like-minded partners who have the same belief. If you talk to the brand director at like Edition Hotels, right, or one of those, Edition don't want 100,000. They don't want an influencer that's got 300,000, getting bikini shots. They want someone who's got a high quality, solid following. That's what they want. As far as a lot of them are concerned, bigger is not necessarily better. So if we wanted to film, then I'd be talking to Edition or Thompson or St. Regis, Ritz-Carlton, that are more about your product, your audience, and not just going, mainstream for the sake of it. I know influencers out there who put stories up, and the stories are not that great, but they've got like 300,000 followers. So they've gone after that. It's like, well, if you want that audience, go for it. That's totally fine.
Right.
We've got tourist boards, the same thing. If you want the audience, cool, go for it. You want mainstream, great. you can get mainstream, but you're not going to get the same quality, as what we provide. So from an audience standpoint, we're very niche, and niche publications generally work. We know, for example, GQ works, we know Vogue works, right? But not every American's buying Vogue. Not every Brit is buying Vogue. They're niche audiences. It's the same thing we have with the TV show.
Yeah, that's so important for those beginner influencers or social media artists, content creators out there. It's knowing that
Yeah.
that niche it's so important. And I remember when I first started, I was all over the place. I was just happy. I wasn't all over the place in the sense that I accepted any marketing product or service. For me, I have to fall, for me to give a good product and marketing the product, I have to be in love with that product or service. Otherwise I can't give my heart. And it's very emotional for me, and
Mhm.
for those out there that it took forever to find that niche, like it took forever to know what audience I wanted to target, what to give them, but once you figure that out, I would say it's easy, but it's not easy, but it is easy, and finding your clients will, like you said, finding your clients is it's easier because they know what you're about. They know what numbers they can look at you and know what numbers you have, what numbers you project, what numbers you're pulling in. And to be a brand ambassador or influence anything, they will ask for those numbers, and like you said,
Yeah.
it's all about the quality, the content, and the numbers,
Mm.
as well as your audience. It has to be a specific type, and so I get it for many eager content creators out there, what they're looking for. But let's kind of shift this like in a fun way.
Mm.
I'm going to ask you certain questions and you have to be as honest as you can, even though it may be hard. It's going to be very broad, but all right.
Yeah.
Favorite airline domestically?
In the US.
Well, in Australia and in the US, since we have a US audience.
We only have like three here now because we've lost one the other day.
Oh, I thought you had 5, huh?
No,
Okay.
the way I would say that at the moment is because obviously everything closed down. So Qantas went down to almost no flights. So I
Oh,
would
wow.
say Qantas would be my favorite at the moment, only because of what they're doing to get travel resumed. So I'll give you an example. So the Queensland, New South Wales and Victorian border just reopened, right? Because the pandemic, so there's basically no coronavirus in Victoria, which had 600 cases a day some 2 months ago. There's 0 cases now. Qantas is adding 500 flights a week from Sydney, between Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and Queensland and Victoria. 500. So I'm going to Melbourne next week. This is the second busiest domestic air route in the world, is Sydney, Melbourne. Second busiest in the world. It's Seoul to Busan in Korea is the pre-pandemic was the busiest in the world domestically. So if you think about it, that's a lot of flights, right? So I'm trying to book a flight next week. Virgin have 5 flights a day, Sydney, Melbourne. Qantas
Okay.
have 25. So Virgin have no flights between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. So as a traveler, as a business traveler, that is ridiculously insane. Like I need to be on a plane by 10 because I've got things to do in the morning. So I'm not going to be at the airport at that time. So they're not flexible enough. There's not the schedule. So at the moment, Qantas, I'll tell you something. So we've got government subsidies for domestic carriers here until I think March, April next year, where they're subsidizing a lot of the routes. So one airline I think is running almost a minimal schedule. Qantas is getting everything moving quickly and fast. And I know that Qantas's strategy is, they've got something like 150 grounded aircraft in Australia sitting around the country, right? This is off a fleet of only 200. They're only flying 50 out of 200 aircraft. Their strategy is get the planes up. If they can cover the cost of the fuel to operate the jets, not even the crew, just the fuel, they will put all those planes back up. So that's their strategy. Virgin's on a skeleton network still. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You can't have 5 a day, Sydney, Melbourne, when the other's doing 25. Like previously, they were both doing about 20 each. So
Wow.
at the moment, I think I like Qantas.
5.
Yeah, Virgin went into well, they went into administration and they just came out, and so they almost completely went under, and they've got a new owner, which is Bain Capital out of the US as their new owner. So I think we'll see it change. But look, they had a fleet of over 100. They've returned about 30 aircraft off leases, so they don't have a fleet now to compete effectively. So I don't say who's my favorite over the two. I think it's just a case
Yeah.
of, at the moment, I would be flying Qantas over Virgin because purely on schedule as a business traveler. Do you know what I mean? So
Okay.
Qantas are getting, so Melbourne to Brisbane, Qantas are flying no flights right now as of a week. As of the 1st of December, they're flying, I think, 46 a week or 64, one of the two. So look how much they're putting up into the sky just between cities. So I'd say that's the reason why I'm sort of in favor of them at the moment. So political answer. US domestic that's really tricky because if we wound the clock back, let's wind the clock back, say maybe 7 years, I would have said I'd prefer to fly Virgin America or JetBlue. Right, new aircraft, live TV fun. Everyone's having fun. They're playing music. They got like disco lights. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was funny. And then Alaska bought Virgin, and but people were flying Virgin because they didn't want to fly American, Delta, or United, right? But in the time from Alaska buying Virgin, American, Delta, and United all caught up pretty quickly. Beautiful new lounges, new onboard product.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you look at the caliber of in-flight service on trans US flights now, between transcontinental flights, look at how good the service is on board those airlines now. I saw JetBlue are just now putting in blankets and pillows and all these new onboard amenities, right? So it's tricky. I think I do like American and United because of the onboard product and the lounge network. Their lounges are stunning.
Sure.
I do like Delta. I haven't flown a lot of Delta because I've got status on One World and Star Alliance. I'm gold on Star and I'm platinum with Qantas. So I get equivalent executive platinum on American when I travel. So I get first class lounges, I get complimentary, economy plus seating and that kind of thing. So I fly United and American a lot because I've got status. I don't have the same status level with Delta. So I haven't had a chance to do them as much. I know they have improved dramatically. So I think, it's tricky. I think it'd be pretty close actually, because the lounge networks of both United and American in the last 2 years are spectacular. Like you look at the JFK and the Newark lounges, from United and American now. I mean, these are proper airline lounges, right? There's great food, there's really nice wines, beautiful furniture. So I don't know, it's tricky. They're pretty much neck and neck, to be fair. I think onboard food is great, onboard wine's great, lounges are good. Although United is using Dreamliners across the country, and I prefer Dreamliners than A321s. So very close. But I've even said that to Doug Parker in America. I said, like, for the love of God, can you put 2 Dreamliners a day on New York, LA? I would be like booking those 2 in a heartbeat, just because it's a long flight in winter, as you know. And the A321 is just halfway through the flight. You're just over the plane's too small. So that's my kind of take on it. Like for example, I have flown out of Miami back to LA a few times as American because they use a 777 or a Dreamliner. It's just nice. It's just so much nicer. If I'm going like, New York to Miami or, Chicago to New York, the 737, I have no issue with. But that's the one little X factor United have at the moment, I think, is flying Dreamliners out of LA and San Francisco to Newark. I think that's a huge X factor that is being missed. I know Delta do wide bodies, transcon as well. And I think it's a similar thing. I think having a bit more room on board from a cabin standpoint just feels better. So yeah, very tricky, but I think there's a huge upgrade. There's a huge difference from what there was 8 years ago. So.
And it makes it makes a world of a difference for somebody like you. You're taller than I am, and I'm only 5'5".
I need main cabin extra. I can promise you, like an economy plus. I need that stuff, like, I don't. Yeah, the extra leg room is good. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not sure if
best
that's the
travel
exact answer you wanted, but
experience. Yeah, absolutely. So what's the best travel experience overall? Not necessarily in and out of Australia, but just
from an airline
um,
standpoint,
mhm,
ooh, I think it's very tricky. It's I fly Cathay Pacific, British Airways, Singapore Airlines, Air New Zealand, Fiji Airways, United, American. It's tricky. All to be honest with you, all those premium carriers now, like Trans-Pacific's a good example to use, and Transatlantic's a good example to use. So Trans-Pacific, Delta, United, I think so Qantas, when it was all normal, Virgin aren't flying. They got rid of their 777s now, so you won't see Virgin back. But Delta got 350s on. I don't think Delta had pajamas. United has pajamas. Americans got
mhm,
pajamas. Qantas has got pajamas. Um, but you've also got to look at a price point, right? So
mhm,
Qantas for business class, price fairly high. They are discounted sometimes. United, generally, you'll find an airfare about 25% less than Qantas.
mhm.
Americans kind of somewhere in the middle. Delta's kind of somewhere in the middle. United generally are the best value for money across, that's on Transpac. I know in Transatlantic, there's now a ton of joint ventures that have all gone through, obviously with Virgin and
Mm.
Delta and United, and with Lufthansa and a few other carriers as well. One World of, got Finnair and Iberia and
Mhm.
BA and everyone involved. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's a bit trickier on that aspect. I think, some of the coolest product at the moment is the Delta One suites are pretty awesome. I don't know if you've flown those yet,
Yep.
but having a
I've
business
seen
class seat
them
with a
online.
sliding
Yeah.
door, awesome. Qatar Airways have that as well on board with the sliding door. British Airways has just introduced that now as well with the sliding door. So look, it's going to get to a point where these carriers are making business class that good. There will be no need to have first class on airplanes. It's
Right.
only really, if you look at where Qantas has first class, it's on the A380, which is not flying at the moment. A lot of it is entertainment business between Sydney and Los Angeles. That's the first class. That's your Russell Crowes and Nicole Kidmans. They're all flying first class Qantas. They're not
Mhm.
private jets. So
Right.
that's the only, but that first class product is $20,000 a ticket. It's not,
Right.
10,000. So our business classes have always traditionally been that good, which I think is why we've seen the US carriers created an awesome business class, what we know globally as a business class experience. I think the term first, I think, is really tricky because in America
Mhm.
it's all getting back to business class, and first
Mhm.
is like you look at airlines and Americans first on the Transcon is their business class product on the Dreamliners and 777. So look, I think yeah, the sliding door product's pretty good.
Agree.
The,
Right.
the other thing I'm like seeing too is more carriers put on local wines, right? So God forbid you get on a United flight 5 years ago and they wouldn't even have California wine on board. It'd be like Italian and French and Australian and the Kiwi stuff, which we don't drink that Sauvignon Blanc. But anyway, that was on there too. And I was talking to them, and I've told this to your former CEO as well, when you're at United, and it's like, can you please put some like a nice American wine on? You've got the Willamette, which produces some of the best Pinot Noir in the
Mhm.
US. You've got the Cabernets out of Napa Valley are getting better and better and better. There's a ton of beautiful small batch producers now that have reinvigorated that segment, that it's not just about the big brands. You can buy a beautiful bottle of
Right.
Napa Cabernet for $25. So I think that yeah, I do prefer to see a bit more of that. We have seen a lot more of it on United and American. So it is, yeah, product standpoint's interesting. It's other airlines like Singapore Airlines have got wonderful products on board. Cathay Pacific's got incredible lounges in Hong Kong. But I haven't done British Airways' new suites yet. I'm keen on that. But one of the coolest though, which you'll have to try and get on at some point, Finnair have their A350, and it's all white on board inside the cabin. And in business class, there are no middle lockers in the middle on top.
Oh,
So
that's
you've got this
nice.
beautiful cabin, and then they do the Nordic lights on the cabin
Oh,
inside
wow.
the aircraft.
Yeah. I'm sold.
But they also serve they've also got the beautiful finished glassware. They do Marimekko like table settings. So that is a really fun experience from an
That is
onboard
fine.
perspective. That's
Yes.
very cool. It's like It's really awesome, and their new lounges in Helsinki are incredible. So, and they're generally like the cheapest in the market actually from business class standpoint. They're really affordable, but that's an
Interesting.
awesome product. You've got to see that at some point. I'm a tiny bit too tall for the business class chairs. My knees kind of touch
Huh.
the tray table. They've got a tray table that comes out from under the screen, not from the side. So I'm a little bit too tall for that, and I'm just on 6 foot. So that's my only tiny thing with them. But the food and wine and the seat
The whole
product's so cool,
experience.
like so much fun. Yeah, having the the frosted kind of glassware from Finland, and yeah, really fun, really
Absolutely.
fun. So they're doing
That's
it really well
awesome.
from a product standpoint.
And then, so I think that answered that question. But so what was your craziest travel experience in regards to not maybe personal, but work experience on the plane?
Coolest experience on the plane? Oh
Mm-hmm.
God, like it depends if it's when I was young or recent. Like young was always like jump seats landing in Hong Kong, because the old Kai Tak in Hong Kong, you'd be so close to the buildings, and they literally you're descending over skyscrapers, and there used to be a sharp right hand turn they have to take to get down to the runway. It is like tight. You should see the old videos. It's pretty awesome. Um, Outside that, oh, that's tricky. One time I was sitting on British Airways 2 rows ahead of the former British Prime Minister. That was a bit of a laugh. I was like, Tony Blair was on the plane behind me. I'm like, why is he? He should be like further up on the plane.
Right. Oh, he was
Um,
behind you.
yeah. I've had actors on board. I've had like rock stars on planes, and yeah. That's pretty much it,
Yeah,
really.
I was going to ask
Yeah,
you, like,
yeah.
what you're exposed to a lot of celebrities. Who is there? Anyone that stands out? After a while, everyone, you're a celebrity yourself, but after a while everyone's just a person, right? A normal person. Is there anyone that still stands out that you would like to meet and you would like to take a picture with?
I did get a couple of random photos with John Travolta after we landed in Dallas on Qantas, because he was the
That's
ambassador. He
cool.
had their like Qantas paint. He had a Qantas painted aircraft and stuff, and sat next to Richard Branson on a couple of flights. Unfortunately, this was when Virgin Australia started a long time ago. Like this is like 2001, so almost 20 years ago. I was sitting like on the front row, and Richard sits next to me. I'm like, what's going on here? And the problem was, he's so jumpy and he's so excited. So he was more about, having toilet paper roll games on the plane where everyone's
Oh my
passing and
gosh,
roll
how
above their
fun.
heads. He was on the PA, so I didn't actually get a chance to actually chat with him properly.
Wow.
I've interviewed him a few times, but he'd be good to sit on a plane with and talk about business and entrepreneurship and how he started an airline. And that was a huge gamble for him to get one 747. They almost didn't launch it, so many times, and he almost went bankrupt so many times. So he'd be fun to do more, to talk to more. Travolta's just very random. So he's at the time he had a weird goatee from a film role he was doing, so he looked a bit strange. But he was I still spoke to him about 707s for about half an hour, I think, at that Qantas event with him. So he was pretty cool. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
So what's the craziest, because again, you have a social media presence
Mm.
through YouTube and on your personal page on LinkedIn as well as Instagram. I don't know if you're on the others, but has anybody ever approached you with any propositions in regards to as far as the Wayfarer or personally or trying to hire you with their brand?
Um, yeah, we get a few. It's more collaborating, I think.
Okay.
We produced a really nice, 4-part series to Singapore as the end of our series one. So end of series two. We filmed that in November, December last year. And we've on the back of that, we've now got, tourist boards in Fiji, the Cook Islands, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Wyoming, all very, very, very excited to want to partner with us now. So more on that aspect of, we're obviously producing good content, and people are like, how do you come and film now with us? That's probably our big thing at the moment in terms of producing, in terms of getting requested to do things. But again, I mean, like in the US, right? You've got, so many networks like NBC and ABC and
Mhm.
CBS and everything, right? So I'm on the two rival breakfast shows as a travel expert, and doesn't seem to bother them anymore, I don't think. So one day I would be on NBC, the next I would be on ABC.
Interesting.
That's a funny thing about that, where it's I think being independent, I can talk on Sky News, I can talk on mainstream TV, or I can talk on a business channel, or I could talk on CNN, I could talk on anything really. So I think I'm not signed up to those networks. I was signed up to Sky with our TV show previously, but yeah, I'm whoever wants to give me a call and ask me to comment about travel at the moment, I'm happy to. It doesn't. So that's one thing that's come out of it, I think, is I've done about like 40 appearances during the pandemic on travel. Unfortunately, a lot of it has been about negative in terms of people going into quarantine in Australia. When you arrive here, Hawaii was doing the same thing, as you recall. So that's the only thing for me is, yeah, I think it's been a bit more flexible, and we're getting more approaches now to either film our full TV show or just appear on TV and as an expert. So yeah, a lot's come out of it.
How many reach out to you through social media as opposed to social media being all of that, the on YouTube, LinkedIn,
Mm. Yeah, we get
Facebook,
a lot on. I get a
Instagram?
lot on. Yeah, I get a little bit on Instagram. It's more I reach out to others, like wineries that I want to do a
Okay.
story with. So I do the reverse, I think.
So you're
But I
very
think brands
selective.
are.
You're selective with
Mm.
who you partner with, as opposed to being open to
Yeah.
just every opportunity out there.
Although other tourist boards see it, if I'm in Singapore and I'm putting stuff up, other tourist boards like, hey, how
Uh-huh.
can you come and do that with us? It's more once it's finished
Interesting.
filming, we kind of we tease it.
Hmm.
Outside that, it's probably LinkedIn. We probably get a few people wanting to do it, but I'm kind of I've networked a lot in the past like 20 years, so I kind of know a lot of people. Versus
Uh-huh.
don't often get tourist boards coming to me saying, hey, can you do it that I don't know? Like we do sometimes, like the Maldives want to do some stuff, but with their COVID strategy, it's way too tricky at the moment to do anything with the Maldives, and it's expensive. Everyone wants you for 3 days, so the cost of production is like insane. We can film a whole 4-part Singapore show in 4 days. Maldives would be 2 weeks. So there are certain ones that we just I'm just like, as much as it would be nice to go and do it, we just can't do it at the same time. So yeah, it's selective as well.
What I love about this episode is I've learned so much, but one of the things that I've learned is just really knowing your craft and knowing you becoming an expert at at your brand and what you have to offer. With that, you can pivot anywhere, as you have in the past, right? From,
Mm.
the journalism to being on the news to your travel productions, and now being on shows, just constantly pivoting, and all that is centered toward knowing the travel industry. And when you know it, you can go anywhere basically. It doesn't matter
Yeah,
where,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
No,
that's a
I
great
agree with you.
that's a great tip for those out there. Just it's great to get into a lot of things, but just really knowing, having your niche and knowing how to use it. And so I've learned so much being on this episode with you. I appreciate your time. You've been I'm sure you could have been doing a lot of other things, being on other networks. I'm sure that other, our viewers have learned a lot from this episode as well. Thank you so much for being on here. One last question. If you
Mhm.
were to give advice for those out there wanting to, I guess, just expand their horizon into social media, those that are scared, or, those that don't know how to get in or why they should get into social media, what advice would you give them in regards to that?
You know what? It's probably, I mean, how did we start out doing stuff on Instagram and everything else? Was pretty much just putting up, high quality, photos and great destinations. So I think it's focusing on doing things from a quality standpoint, or don't put them up. I've learned that when you put posts up, it's either put a really good photo up or don't. And I think that's where stories kind of helped. So I think, yeah, it's a case of, don't just put every photo up. As you know well, you kind of, you color balance and correct every photo. just because you want people to, get a bit more excited about it. I think that's a better way to go about it, I think. So yeah, I think it's just be focused on quality, not quantity.
Great. And that's James Wilkinson, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks.